Hello, Newsa-Cast listeners. This week's show features Ryan Borowicz, the owner of The Driveway in Hobart, Wisconsin. Bill Walton is our throwback, and everybody's favorite old look at new, and forgotten and never forgetting. Now let's get this show on the road.
This guy's teaching me to shoot. He just made 66 shots in a row.
Welcome to the Newsa-Cast. What is a Newsa-Cast? It's where we bring local folk stories to life through conversation.
Hello, Newsa-Cast listeners. Welcome to what is unbelievable to me, episode 7 of the Newsa-Cast. We're back. We're learning. We have good interviews. We have good content. We have good stories. And we're learning along the way here. So I think that's the best thing. I'm just amazed this week again, where we have a great story from Ryan Borowicz, just talking about his life and talking about the things he did. It's what we want to
talking about the Brown County Arena, Tash. Remember the old Brown County Arena? Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
a lot of reminiscing there.
Not only seeing sports there, but also seeing concerts at the Brown County Arena, and it would just echo back and forth throughout that dome. It was a terrible place for concerts, but
it was the biggest dump in the world, but we all loved it. A lot of pretty cool things came through that venue for sure. And UWGB, we talked with Ryan a little bit about it, but he came in right at the tail end of the Dick Bennett years, right. And then Mike Heidemann. But all through those years, the late 80s into the mid 90s, there were some great UWGB basketball teams, exciting basketball teams, and Ryan was a part of those.
The Brown County Arena, which is funny. My boys actually had some practice hockey at the Brown County Arena when they had a sheet of ice in there, not that long ago. But it was so hot that the kids basically would take all of their stuff off except just their pads, because they'd just be dripping sweat because of those big, huge lights that would shine down in that arena. But
yes,
cool. It was a cool venue growing up. You're from Northeast Wisconsin, from the Green Bay, Appleton area. The Brown County Arena. So
absolutely. Who didn't go to a circus at the Brown County Arena?
Yeah, circus, monster trucks, you name it.
Ice capades. Yeah, absolutely.
So, hey, we're in the start of football season now for the high school, start of fall sports for all the high schools as well. And I know this week you have your first game reffing.
Yes. I won't tell you what venue it's at, but I'm excited for sure.
We don't want any hecklers. Your podcast sucks.
You're right. You can't have that. I mean, surely you come out there to watch the officials, right? It's not about the football.
Not about the football. Speaking of football, we had Packers obviously had their first preseason, and a lot of excitement there. A lot of young guys doing some great things out there. I think it's going to be a fun season to watch.
They look to be like a fast team, and that's always good.
And the other big thing is the Brewers are continuing. They have a 2.5 game lead right now in their division, and they're looking good. They're winning close games, which I like to see, because that tells you, once we get into those playoff stretch, if they make the playoffs, they're going to have that grit and that ability to win those close games. Yeah,
I hope so. I mean, they're to me kind of an exciting. I didn't really expect them to be, I guess, in this position, but they are, and it's life's just better when the Brewers are in the playoff hunt. It certainly gets us to football season, but
yeah,
you're right. Maybe they can do a little damage in the playoffs. Just play scrappy ball and see what happens, right?
Yeah, it's a fun time of year. I think we talked about this in an earlier podcast. I like this time of year because it's a lot of renewal. Yeah. You have high hopes. Everybody is at the same level. Nobody's won or lost yet, and we're looking into everybody has that possibility to make it.
Absolutely. Brewers are looking good. Week 1 of football is underway. High school football. Life's pretty good here in northeastern Wisconsin. You've got the Packers are a couple of weeks away as we go through spring training camp, and football's back. Fall's almost here. We have a little bit of summer left, which we'll enjoy, but life's pretty good here in northeastern Wisconsin this time of year.
And, I just want to throw out to all those high school players too. we hope in future episodes here that we will be touching base with high schools and spreading the excitement of local players. That's one of the things we're doing with this Newsa-Cast as well. We are the Northeast Wisconsin Sports Advancement, so we will be taking a look at local players once the seasons get going here, and possibly have some local players on the podcast and telling their story as well.
Yeah, we're working through all of that, Tosh. You're absolutely right. I mean, this is why we started this, was to highlight local sports, whether it's high school, lower, higher, whatever. But folks from this area, they're tied to sports, and we're big backers of high school sports, and we're going to start to get some of the student athletes involved on this show, and some of the coaches, administrative staff of the different schools, and start taking it to each of the schools in the area and diving into their programs and really exploring youth sports and local sports in this area.
Yeah, this is great. So, we're pretty excited about this episode, as we are about all of our episodes. And again, you like these, you listen to us, subscribe, download, tell your friends, tell your family, listen to it while you're driving, and just get out and get the word out for us. That would be great.
We would love that. Check us out. We're on YouTube. The Newsa-Cast is on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes. I mean, obviously, if you're listening to this, you know how to get a podcast, but take it that one step further and just please hit follow or please hit subscribe. Make sure that you get that automatic download. Those numbers mean the world to us. Take that one extra step. We would be forever grateful.
So enjoy this episode. Listen to Brian's story. And don't forget, we have a great throwback with Bill Walton.
Yes.
It's time for the old look at new. So we're going to look at some historical pieces here in the Valley, the States, or even possibly the nation. It kind of ebbs and flows a little bit. So you ready for this, Joe?
I'm ready for this, Tosh.
It's football season, so I think I have a good one here.
Yes.
I'm going to start off. August 11th, 1919, the Green Bay Packers were formed.
Ah, yes. The Acme Packers, right?
The Acme Packers at that time, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I came across that one. I was like, oh my gosh, that's perfect. Yeah, August 11th, 1919.
Yeah, some of those classic old photos.
That's crazy.
Unbelievable. Remember those old photos, the uniforms back in the day, Curly Lambeau? That was something else. And just shortly after that, Don Hudson comes and they pretty much invent the forward pass.
It's amazes me when you look at those old teams in professional sports in general, that those guys, they played and they went and worked.
Oh, yeah.
It's just absolutely incredible considering what we have today and the millions and millions of dollars that sports generates. It
really
amazing.
is. I mean, and it wasn't really that long ago that the professional athlete didn't work in the off season. I mean, 60s and 70s, those guys were still working. But, if you ever get the chance and you're up in Green Bay, one of the best, it's a high school field now, but it's just a beautiful stadium is Old City Stadium. Right.
City Field.
Right.
Yeah,
that's where the Packers played. You just go online, there's some really, really cool photos of that stadium back in the day. But, this just jogged my memory. I remember my dad telling me a story. He was born in 1921, so not too long after the Packers were formed. But when he was maybe an early teenager, if not 10, up in City Stadium, him and his brother Sam used to just run in with the players as they were running onto the field so they wouldn't have to pay the gate admission. So,
I can totally see them doing that.
Absolutely. He always said that his parents didn't know a football from a watermelon, but they would drive him and his brother up to Green Bay. And, the late 1920s, that had to be quite the trip. And they would just sit in the car while my dad and Sam would run with the players right onto the field.
That's awesome. That's a nice memory.
I appreciate you jogging that memory for me, Tosh. I haven't thought of that in a while. Well, mine kind of tags a little bit right off of yours. So Packers were formed in 1919, but if you go to 1964, June 3rd, 1964, in fact, in Menasha, Wisconsin, Fred Thurston, Fuzzy Thurston, Bill Martini, and a couple of the guys decided to put together what was called the 1,000-Yard Club. Now, this was absolutely, just blows my mind that this actually happened. But every year in June, I think it was held at Ridgeway. It was the 1,000-yard club. So every 1,000-yard rusher in the NFL came to Menasha, Wisconsin, and they had a banquet for them. So you had guys like Jim Brown and, I hate to say it, O.J. Simpson, guys like that, the greatest running backs in the 60s and early 70s would come. And they had the absolute, I know this is a podcast, but I'm holding it up for Tosh. This was the program. It's a football. I'll snap a picture and I'll put it on our Newsa-Cast Twitter page, but it's by far the coolest program I've ever seen. It's an NFL football, and just paging through it, it's incredible to think. I mean, you imagine that now? I mean, 1,000 yards doesn't quite mean. I mean, the season was shorter back in the 60s, but
right.
I don't know what the equivalent is now. 1,500 yards, 2,000 yards, but you would have all the greatest running backs that play now would come to Appleton or Menasha or whatever, and you'd have a banquet for them. I think that's pretty gosh darn cool, and two, just kind of unbelievable.
That is unbelievable. That's fantastic. I never knew about that. That's the
1,000-yard rushing club.
Hey, I got one more that I'm just going to throw out there because it kind of ties in, especially with sports today. August 11th. 50 years ago today, 50 years ago on August 11th, hip hop was born.
Nice.
And hip hop has a huge influence on sports, basketball and even football. I mean, a huge influence on sports at this time. And there's such a tie-in between the two that you can't forget the old hip hop from 50 years ago.
What would pre-games be without hip hop?
Exactly. I remember high school and little NWA, a little Run DMC.
Yeah, a little Run DMC. Love those guys. No, that's a great one.
So I just wanted to, I had to throw that one in as well. So, but that's some cool stuff. Packers, 1,000-yard club.
Little hip hop. I
mean, that's fantastic.
Let's go.
Stuff.
It's football season, Tosh.
Well, that was an old look at new. Thank you guys for giving us some time and throwing that stuff out there. And remember, if you like this, continue to listen to the podcast and, go back and hear some of our old ones as well. All right, Newsa-Cast listeners, very lucky this week. We're going to look back at some UWGB days, some Ashwaubenon basketball and football and sports days by talking to Ryan Borowicz. Ryan Borowicz is the owner of The Driveway up in Hobart.
Tosh, this was just one of those fun evenings. You and I doing this where we get to talk to a lot of different people, and I enjoy it more and more every single time. And Ryan was one of those guys where we just had a conversation. And you're right. We talked about everything from high school to his playing career at UWGB, being recruited by Dick Bennett. The fascinating, just fun interview to listen to.
Yeah, it's cool. We kind of traveled all over, and like we are talking about as far as this podcast is concerned, we're telling stories, and we got to hear his story from high school and youth sports, shooting around with his dad, all the way up to playing in Australia, and even a little bit about his involvement with Alliance Church.
You guys will love it. Thank you, and enjoy the conversation. So, Ryan, you get a little time off now after next week? You take a vacation, or is it pretty much year-round?
Yeah, no, it's so we go. The summer's by far my hardest and busiest season as far as just on the court. I average between 9 and 14 hours a day on the court, on instructing. So it's just it's crazy. I mean, I've had people come in and yesterday, in fact, a guy texted me. He's like, I was in there, I was watching you. He's like, so it's just this week that you do this, right? And I was like, no, we do this for 10 straight weeks in the summer. And he just was like, you got to be kidding me. So it's full on until the end of next week. And then my wife is gracious and she lets me go away. I love to fly fish and go out west. So the last 2 years I've gone to Montana by myself and camped in the mountains and
nice.
For 3 days. So this year I'm going to Wyoming, total middle of nowhere, Wyoming. Same deal, just camp on the river and fish for 3 days and not talk to anyone and not hear a basketball bouncing. And
that's got to be nice.
And then I get, then I kind of ease back into on the court. I really, September as a parent, first week of September is crazy. So we don't even do anything at the driveway that first week. And then we kind of ease back in. So I'll get back on the court about September, I think 11th is a Monday, maybe. So I get a nice break. But there's really no off season. That was one of the things when I opened it. I kind of knew what summer was going to be like because I was doing it at Appleton Alliance Church. For the most part, certainly not as full on as I do it now, but I'd been running camps, so I kind of knew what to expect in the summer. But the school year was a total unknown. I don't know how busy it's going to be. I didn't know if there was going to be a downtime. I mean, I lined the courts at the driveway with volleyball just in case I wasn't busy and I had to rent it out to volleyball teams. So it was totally an unknown for the school year. But there's really no downtime. It's definitely year round and then some.
Do you have teams that travel out of there, or is it just strictly instructional?
No, I made a choice, when I first started, and then another kind of reinforcement a few years ago. I didn't want to do AAU teams. There's plenty of people doing it. I like the ability to work with everyone. And if you have your own program, you end up kind of pigeonholing yourself to sometimes working with just kids in that program. And there's some other reasons too, but the main one was, it was never my vision. And I've tried to stick to the vision of the driveway as much as I can. And the vision was always to teach and inspire, and coaching is part of that. And I get to do it. I coach my son's AAU teams, but because I can stay laser focused on one thing, I don't have 7 irons in the fire and doing this and that. I can focus on one thing, and that allows me to, use how I'm gifted, and then people know what they're getting when they come too. They're getting someone who loves to teach and wants to inspire kids, and not, I've got to do this and that and the other thing as well.
Right. I tell you, as a dad that I've had kids that have gone through travel sports, whether it's soccer or lacrosse. It is so refreshing to hear that message, because you do not hear that message anymore. Yeah. That's part of the problem, and it's just awesome. I don't know how else to say it.
Thanks. Well, and most of the people, there's facilities even in our area and around the country that, they've usually geared towards teams, and I don't know, it just was never part of my vision, and I've just really tried to stay true to that, and it's been good.
If we could go back a little bit and talk about maybe you growing up in high school. So is basketball your thing all the time? Or did you play multiple sports?
Yeah. So I was definitely played everything. I was a competitor who played everything. I competed in bowling. I was just a competitor. And so played, growing up, played baseball, soccer, basketball, and football. And I went to a small Catholic grade school. So we didn't have tackle football. We just had 2-hand touch football. And then, didn't do any travel ball stuff. There obviously wasn't anything like that. You just played Little League, and you played for the rec soccer league. And then in high school, I decided to stick with football, and so gave up soccer in high school. But I played, I'm a dinosaur. I played all 3 sports all the way 4 years to high school.
Yeah, there's not many of you.
Yeah. And, it was great because, and I've never once, even though I run a basketball facility, I've never once told a kid, hey, you should just focus on basketball. I just don't believe it's good for you emotionally, mentally, physically. And I think if you handle your time right, you can do it all. Now, if you have to work and that kind of thing, there's certain kids you just maybe can't, but, if you're a competitor, it's going to carry over into other areas of your life, and you're always going to compete in your job and against, if you're a salesperson, you're competing for that business or whatever it is. So learning to compete, I think, is really important. And so in high school, I played baseball. I was average at best. I didn't play a whole lot my junior year and improved a lot. We had a really good senior year, but I never practiced it. I just played and had fun, and it was very relaxed. But football and basketball, I played, all the time and worked out all the time, and was very serious about those, and actually probably had better football accolades. I was the state player of the year in football. My senior year, I was first team All-State in 3 positions.
Yeah, I was reading that. That is absolutely nuts. So quarterback, kicker, and punter, right?
Yeah, I think they just had to give me the Player of the Year award just because the guy was 3 position, so I think they had to. There was certainly better players. Yeah, it was football, and I was below average my sophomore year when I started on the varsity as a quarterback, and I was a good kicker. Punting, I was pretty inconsistent until my senior year. Then I got very consistent through some technique changes and good coaching. And then quarterback, I was below average my sophomore year, average my junior year, and then really improved my senior year. And just, how it is, you just get that. Most quarterbacks don't get that third year of varsity to really feel comfortable. And I was fortunate to have that third year as a starter, and everything just slowed down, got very, not easy, but it just made sense. Whereas I felt my sophomore year, I was a mess. Junior year, I'd have glimpses. Senior year was very consistent, and we had a great team, so it helped a ton, obviously. And then basketball, was always my first love, even though physically I don't look like and probably shouldn't have been a basketball player. It was always my first love. My dad was a great player, and I always looked up to him, and I had his newspaper clippings up on my wall from back when he was a player. And
so the jump shot runs in the family.
Oh yeah. My dad grew up in Duluth, Minnesota, and played at Minnesota Duluth. Probably could have gone, a much bigger school, but his family, he had really young siblings. He was like 18, 19. He had like newborn siblings, and his father was disabled, and they lived in a 2-bedroom house and didn't have a lot, so he had to stay at home and go to school, live with his in the same room with his little newborn siblings, and yet played college basketball. So
unreal.
Wow. But yeah, basketball was always first love, but I love football. I mean, I'm excited now. My son's got a scrimmage tomorrow, and he has his first game next Friday, and football season's just fantastic. I love it.
Who does he play for?
West Appear.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's a great program.
Yeah. We're fortunate. We've got a great coach and a good leader of young men, and I have a junior that plays and a freshman that plays.
I've been a long-time high school official, and I've always respected West Appear. They've had 2 of the greatest coaches really to go in this area.
Yeah. And Chris has been a good friend, Chris Grice, and the coach now.
Sure.
We're the same age, and we met each other at a basketball camp, actually. And we just clicked and have stayed friends all the way through. And then when he got the job, I was lobbying for him. And, I was just so excited that my kids will, be able to be impacted by someone like him.
You tapped into a lethal weapon in high school is to have a great kicker. So that might be some good advice for Chris. Steal those soccer players, right?
Right.
So growing up playing 3 different sports, how did that impact you as an athlete and as a person?
Well, you learn, like I said, the competitiveness just had an outlet. And, I grew up during that fun era where you just went out in the neighborhood, and I had 3 or 4 good buddies in the neighborhood, and that was it. You came home when your mom yelled through the neighborhood, and you could hear my mom from, 10 houses away. And we played, we'd play pickle for hours. We'd play football. We'd play kick the can. And, one of the guys I always kind of attribute, one of my best friend growing up lived down the street a bit, and he ended up being the player of the year, the defensive football player of the year. He was a linebacker at Notre Dame high school, and he was ultra competitive as well. So we just battled in everything, so you just became very competitive, and I was always driven, and I have that thing inside of me where I can work really hard, and like I said, and it's translated into like what I do in the summer, especially. I don't have any problem working hard or doing it by myself or being alone in the gym or in my driveway. And that always, was a good outlet for me, and certainly helps you manage your time. And I was fortunate. My parents didn't ask me to work, have a job during high school or anything. So I was able to devote all that time to improving.
Were most of your strokes grooved right literally in the driveway?
Oh yeah. I mean, I spent an inordinate amount of time in my own driveway.
Yeah.
And, even going to the park, which nobody does anymore, but, hands down, I spent way more time in my own driveway than I ever did anywhere else. But we lived fairly close to Lombardi Middle School, in Green Bay Southwest. We were in that area, and there was a real small YMCA close by, and I would go and spend just hours there, trying to get in a game or get on a hoop or whatever. But by far the most amount of time in the driveway, which, when it came to naming the facility, there was never a plan B or an option number 2. It was the driveway, and that was it.
Yeah, that's a perfect name. Would you and Dad play a little horse in the driveway?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And he was good too. He could shoot it. And my brother was a pretty solid player. He didn't take it. He wasn't as big as I was. So he was, he was a really good football player. He was a center actually at Premontre. If you guys remember before.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And they had solid teams, and he was small. He was 5'10", 150-pound center, but was all conference. So he had some go get it to him as well.
How old were you when you could consistently beat your dad at horse?
Oh boy, probably 7th, 8th grade is when I could start to beat my brother and one-on-one. He was 4 years older than me. And then, I grew a bit, and then just the amount of time, I knew every spot in the driveway, and my dad didn't spend as much time on it. So I was like, Dad, I got this spot. The elevation's a little bit tilted, and, I hit it from there.
That's awesome.
Just like the old commercials, off the Michael Jordan and Larry Bird, off the scoreboard into the.
Yep, we played a lot.
Those are awesome.
It's fun. Like literally, I don't know if you can hear it. My son is out on our driveway right now, shooting, and I can hear the ball bouncing, and it's literally just yes, that's how it should be.
Yeah.
And he goes to the driveway a lot, the facility on his own.
Nice.
Both of them do, but. I love it when they're in our driveway, So
you get to that point, and you're in high school, and you're trying to make a decision to maybe something that you're going to do for a while after high school. How did you make that decision? How did that all come together?
Well, I had a pretty good sophomore season, and then my junior season, I was surprised. I got player of the year in the conference as a junior, which I really didn't expect, but we had a really good team. We went undefeated in the conference, the old Bay Conference. And I was, probably the best player on the best team. So I got player of the year. And I think at that point I was like, oh geez, there's not that many of those around. And, there wasn't AAU, you didn't travel around the country and compare yourself. You literally, you compared yourself to the people you played against in your conference. So for me, it was like, ooh, I'm okay, and I'm starting to get some interest from colleges, and but the dream for me was always to play at Green Bay. I grew up, we're a couple miles from the arena. We went to every game, literally every single game. Never missed it, and Tony Bennett was my idol, and I wanted to be just like him. So it was kind of a no-brainer once they started recruiting me. If this happens, I'm going to say yes. And, I was kind of borderline just because of my size as a shooting guard. I'm 6 foot, there's not a lot of 6 foot Division I shooting guards.
Oh, Tony Bennett.
Yeah. But he was like the greatest player of all time. So, and I wasn't, so he was definitely the mold, and that was, I literally talk about Tony every day because at my camps, we talk shooting and I show pictures of great shooters, and I have pictures of Tony in there, and he still holds the record for 3-point field goal percentage, which is amazing. And in fact, I showed a video of him shooting today with one of his players at Virginia. So he really impacted me, not only as a player and someone I wanted to be like, but off the court. He was a good person. And I was like, and it's one thing I tell the kids too. It's like one thing if I look up to Giannis, and Giannis is a great dude and seems like, and a great player, but physically I can't do anything that Giannis can do. So I always looked up to guys like Steve Alford, if you guys remember him from
Sure. Absolutely.
Normal sized people that, okay, if they can be good, I can do that. I can be good. So I was fortunate to have those role models, specifically Tony, literally in my backyard, and I could watch him play every night,
Tony is, in my opinion, a spitting image of his dad, Dick, and Dick recruited you to play. Can you talk a little bit about Dick Bennett? I mean, he's just an amazing man.
Yeah, he's an icon for sure. And I got to play for him for 1 year. So he recruited me, and then he was there my freshman year, and then he left after my freshman year to go to Wisconsin.
Right. And Mike Heidemann stepped in, correct?
Correct. And Heidemann was the assistant. He'd been the recruiting guy. So it made sense. Like for me, it was fortunate, because I think if someone else had gotten the job, and I was fortunate that Mike got the job. But yes, playing for for Dick was certainly the goal. And, I got to know him well, obviously off the court too. And just a real good role model for sure.
Yeah, definitely. We talked before we hit record a little bit that, the Dick Bennett years, the Tony Bennett years, and then, your years up at the Brown County Arena. I mean, it's no longer there anymore, but in my opinion, there was no better college atmosphere than when that arena was packed and way over fire code. And it was so loud in that place.
Yes.
It was the most incredible court and home court advantage you could ask for.
Huge home court advantage. It was freezing cold.
Yeah.
You get these teams in there and they're walking out like, there's ice under the court. Yep. And the locker rooms were not in good condition and they were freezing cold. Like we used to wear gloves in the locker room, like just stuff on, and then coach is talking, you got gloves on. So huge home court advantage. And yeah, certainly like that late 80s, early 90s when Tony and Ben Johnson and John Martinez and then that kind of bled into the Jeremy Ludwig's and Eric Leduc.
Yeah.
And then Norgard, Gresh, Berlowski, Jackson, like that group. Those guys were great. And I was fortunate to just catch I played 2 years with Norgard and Gresh and Jackson and Berlowski. And, I got to kind of piggyback on some of that. And then I played 3 years. So I redshirted my sophomore year because I had 2 foot surgeries. So then I kind of feel like I had 2 careers. The first 2 years I didn't play at all. First year I wasn't good enough. Second year I was medical redshirt. And then my next 3 years I played a lot. We didn't have quite the success. We still had good teams, I felt like, but we didn't have quite the success that they did prior to that. But I got to taste a little bit of that. So it was such a fortunate thing.
Were you at the 95 when you guys played Purdue?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, what a heartbreaker that one. I still feel that one.
Yeah. Yeah. That was that I'll never forget. Like, you have certain moments that kind of take your breath away. A few years ago, our family went to the Grand Canyon. That was a take your breath away. I was fortunate to play a season in Australia, and I went scuba diving on the Great Barrier Reef. That was a take your breath away moment. I went skydiving. That was a take your breath away moment. And then that NCAA tournament, walking into the arena for the first round of the NCAA tournament and seeing all the banners and the crowd, and Louisville was playing somebody else. I can't remember, but it was like, oh my gosh, I literally just was like the energy and this is the NCAA tournament. Are you kidding me? So there's been moments like that. And that was certainly one of them.
I mean, I thought you guys had the game to be honest, but I mean, it was such a good game. Is it hard to take that loss? I mean, you still think about it, or is just the memory just so great of you were in the NCAA tournament? Well,
I think if I played, I didn't get in that game, thankfully, because I got really sunburned. This is kind of a funny story. Me and Jeff Norgard used to love to play trivia, and we would just read trivia questions to each other. The Trivia Pursuit game, we would just take the cards and read the trivia questions and quiz each other. So that day, it was a hot, sunny day in Austin, Texas, and we didn't play till like 8:00 at night. We had the second game, I think, of the evening. And he and I sat outside, with our shirts off, and we're just in Texas, and hey, we're, a couple of dudes from the cold weather. We sat outside for probably 3 hours, and I got so sunburned the day of the game, and I knew I wasn't going to play, but Jeff was our best player. So after that, so the funny thing is I was so sunburned, I didn't want to take my warm-up jacket off because my arms were so red. I just looked like a clown. So like in the pictures, I'm the only guy who still has his full jacket on. And the really funny thing, after the game, I'm walking into the shower, and I'm literally beet red on the top of my upper body. And I'm getting in the shower, and Coach Bennett walks by, and he just looks at me, and he does like a double take, and he goes, he just shakes his head. It was not one of my finest moments, but so in that game I didn't play, but I remember bits and pieces. Certainly the atmosphere to me was just amazing. I was happy to be there. I think Jeff and those guys, because they had won the year before against Cal, I think they fully expected to win that game, not, hey, we're happy to be here. Like, we won a game last year. We almost won a second game against Syracuse. We're going to beat Purdue. That was they were that good. And Coach Bennett was that good that, like, I think they fully expected to win that game. I was just happy to be there.
Right. That Cal game was Tony shut down Jason Kidd, right? Was that the game?
That was Gary Gresh.
Gresh. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes. Yep.
So they had another guy named Lamont Murray that was a lottery pick. They had 2 lottery picks that game in that team. And so that was certainly the biggest win, I think, in program history for sure.
If you could go back a little bit to the recruiting process. So what was that like for you coming out of high school in Ashwaubenon, being recruited by UWGB?
Well, it was, the big thing was, I think they just kept hearing about me. When Coach Bennett, lived in town and would pick up the paper, he'd read my name, And there was another guy named Kevin Olm. If you guys remember Kevin, he played at Green Bay East. And we were the same age, and we were the 2 best players in Green Bay. And we both went to their camps growing up. I think we fit. Certainly, I know personally, I was not a Division I athlete. I just fit really well what they wanted to do. And I think he saw Kevin and I. Kevin was more of a Division I athlete. He was long, he's 6'3", really long arms, fairly athletic, and really good defender. So I think Coach Bennett saw he and I as just a combo. Like, Kevin's going to penetrate and pitch, and I'm going to hit threes. And that's, I think, how they and then Kevin could really defend, and that was a question mark for me. But I turned into a decent defender, and because you don't play if you can't defend, so you might be able to do it. But I think I was fortunate to grow up in Green Bay, that they just kept hearing about me. I had some other Division I interest, but I committed, early the summer, end of the summer of my going into my senior year. So I didn't wait to play out the senior year. Okay. So when they offered, I had some Division II schools that I probably was going to go to. Probably would have ended up at South Dakota State, or Duluth. South Dakota State had a really good program back then, and they were D2, but now they're D1. But they really had it rolling back then. And I could have potentially kicked or punted as well on the football team. So, but as soon as Green Bay offered that summer, it was like, yep, no doubt about it. So it wasn't the recruiting kind of thing you see now and all the craziness and social media and all that. Like, you just hoped you were good enough, and then they called. Like, there was no rankings, and I mean, I guess there was kind of, but not really.
Is there a point in you playing, even all the way back into like your younger years, that you knew basketball was something that's a thing, it's a possibility for you?
It's a good question. I was always one of the better players in the area, and I think same thing with Kevin at Green Bay East. Like, there was probably 10 guys who were pretty good in 7th or 8th grade in our area, and I was one of those 10. And then I just kept improving, and that's one thing I keep telling kids at the driveway every day is, things change, kids switch sports, kids grow, kids don't grow, kids hit puberty, they hit puberty in 3rd grade. You know what I mean? Like, you just have to keep improving. And, every once in a while, somebody is just physically blessed. They're either really tall, really athletic, whatever their physical gift is. But if you're not going to get that, and I knew my dad was fairly tall, but my mom was really short. And like, I knew I wasn't going to be really tall. You better be able to dribble, pass, and shoot. And I just worked on those things, nonstop. And I think about my, that summer, going into my senior year, there wasn't all the AAU stuff, but I went to a lot of camps, and I felt like I was always one of the best players at these camps, going against guys from anywhere in the Midwest. I mean, I got invited to Wisconsin, had a select invite only camp for their top 32 players is basically who it was, in Michigan, Iowa, Illinois, and Minnesota and Wisconsin. So there was 32 guys there, 3 days, just with the coaches. And I felt like I was the best player there. No, I never heard from them again because they probably realized we don't need a 6-foot shooting guard. But everybody, I played so well and shot so well that other guys at the camp were like, dude, you're walking out of here with a scholarship. You've played the best here. I wasn't the best player. I just played the best that week. And I did that at 3 other camps too, and really felt like, okay, I know I can play against everybody, because there's just only so many guys who can shoot. And for me, it was shooting. So if you're one of the top shooters in the country, somebody's going to find you.
Right.
When you're on your driveway, I mean, how many shots are you putting up in high school? Just on your own? Did you have like your own little routine that you went through? You had to put X amount of shots up, had to do X amount of dribbling?
It wasn't. I had a little bit of dribbling routine, and I always shoot 100 free throws a day. But as far as like I got to shoot 500 or something like that, no. It was volume. It was just always what I was doing. My mom would make fun of me and she's like, it would rain and you'd be like, no, I'm dodging the rain. And I would shovel the driveway and I would play in the winter and I would shoot with gloves on. And like, it just was, you could do that because you didn't have a phone and you didn't sit on your computer, right, your laptop, your iPad. I mean, it's just what you did. Which, like I said, kind of really excites me when my kids could do that other stuff and they're out there shooting around.
Yes. No, absolutely. Were your parents pretty just letting you kind of decide through high school what course you wanted to take? As far as, did they ever push you towards basketball? Did they ever push you towards a sport?
No, not at all. In fact, they let me choose the high school I wanted to go to because we grew up in that Green Bay Southwest area. So if I would have gone to public school, I would have gone there. But we moved like about 2 miles down the road towards Lambeau Field, and that was just across the street, but it was in Ashwaubenon. But then when we moved into Ashwaubenon, I started playing baseball in the summer with Ashwaubenon kids and really hit it off and got some good friends. And then the basketball guy found me. And so I started doing like the off season stuff in Ashwaubenon. So we moved when I was in going into 7th grade. So then the summer going into my freshman year of high school, my parents let me choose. Do you want to go to Notre Dame? Because it had switched. That would have been the first full year of Notre Dame.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really like it. I grew up Promontory, and when you went, my brother went to Promontory. You hated Abbott Pennings, right?
Yeah.
You guys remember Abbott Pennings? Was
sure.
Cool.
Yep.
And now you're going to go to school with those kids? Are you kidding me? So the whole concept, I don't think a lot of people my age really liked. And if it would have stayed Promontory, I probably would have gone there. But I didn't really like the whole idea of it being co-ed and now you're mixed with these guys, and couple that with, I've got 2 or 3 really good buddies now in Ashwaubenon, and I didn't have that really at Notre Dame. I wouldn't have had that. And so then I just told my parents, I was like, I want to go to Ashwaubenon. And there was good opportunity to play, on the varsity as a younger player, whereas I felt like Notre Dame was pretty stacked in football and basketball. But really it came down to friends. I had these good buddies who literally, I spent the night with one the other night. We're still good buddies, and that was a big deal.
That's how Eric and I are. We've known each other since 7th grade.
Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, it really came down to that. And it was great. I'm sure Notre Dame would have been fine too, but I loved Ashwaubenon.
You've talked about your dad. You've talked about Tony Bennett. Is there anybody else that you really looked up to as a player as you were growing up that you wanted to emulate that person? I was really fortunate to have a Division I program in town, Yeah.
And Ben Johnson played with Tony. If you guys remember Ben.
Sure.
He's still the best defender because he was an assistant coach at Green Bay for 4 years when I was there. And he was still in great shape, and we played the best defender I've ever played against, and it's not even close. And so I would watch him on defense and Tony on offense. And I think just having those guys as somebody to look up to. And then certainly Ashwaubenon had some good players that were there when I was a freshman. They had a good senior that I would look up to. And, and guys like that, they just kind of make an impact, and because you want to be them. I really had that desire to, someday be that guy, and that was really important to me. And certainly Tony being at Green Bay was an easy one to emulate, and the Badgers at the time weren't any good. So they weren't good in football. They weren't good in basketball. So I grew up an Iowa fan. And I don't know why Iowa, just for some reason, I just became a Iowa Hawkeye fan, and they were good in football and basketball, better than the Badgers.
Yep.
And in fact, one of my favorite, another one of those moments you'll remember forever, my 12th birthday, my parents got us tickets to go to an Iowa-Wisconsin game at Wisconsin basketball. And so we go to the game, and I'm decked out. I got Iowa hat, Iowa sweatshirt, Iowa sweatpants, black and gold shoes, like decked out. And we had kind of crummy seats, but the cool part was we went in front of the locker room, and there was 50 or 60 Iowa fans there that were lining both sides of the locker room and high-fiving the team as they came out to do warm-ups, right? So I'm 12 years old at that point. Fast forward 6 years later, I'm a freshman at Green Bay. We're playing at Wisconsin. We come out of that same locker room, and there's Green Bay fans lining the locker room, and I'm high-fiving people. And that's like, I get chills thinking about that, to know like how hard I worked from that 12 years old to 18 years old to be the guy that I was high-fiving coming out. You know what I mean? And it was literally like, I talk about that at the driveway a lot. Like if you want something, you got to envision it. You got to see it. And that was like the culmination of that 6 years of hard work to go from being the kid to being the guy running out. So
what a great story.
Yeah.
That is awesome. So your college career, and you play GB. So you start to look professionally. Was that something that was on your mind, or is it something that
No,
hey, this could happen?
Yeah, it certainly wasn't at all. I wanted to play with this group called Athletes in Action. If you guys are familiar with them, it's a Christian.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I was fortunate to play on two of their summer tour teams. So they put together tours in the summer to go overseas, and you play ball, and then you do some ministry work in the community or a country. Or
and you guys were good. I mean, that was a good team.
Yeah, they used to do these summer teams, and I played on two of them. So I went to Poland and Croatia my first summer, and then I went to Brazil and Peru my first summer, and then Poland and Croatia the second one. So this was the end of after my senior year, and it was a great way to play. You meet guys from different schools. It was it was a great way to see ministry in real life and get out of the country and just see things beyond yourself and get a bigger appreciation for the world and God and everything. And then they used to have this fall tour team that would go around and play an exhibition schedule. So, the first 2 weeks in November, usually the colleges get 2 exhibition games. And so the Athletes in Action would put together a couple teams and run around. And we played the 1 year I played after my senior year, we played 15 games in 16 days in 15 different cities. I mean, it was crazy, crazy drive, super fun. I mean, and you got paid a little bit, but it was really a fun thing. We had a good group of guys. You play in high level teams. It was super fun. So I played on that team. So we had like a 6-week training camp. I was not thinking of playing professionally. I was about to do my student teaching in the fall. But I delayed my student teaching to be able to play on this team, because it was like basically all of October, November, I was going to be with this team. So I was just going to delay it a semester and do it, but not with the goal of playing. But as I was doing the 6-week training camp and on this team, I was one of the better players. And most of these guys were then going to go overseas and play. And I was like, these guys are bigger, faster, stronger, but I was like second leading scorer on the team. I was like, maybe there's something, but it still probably wouldn't happen. But I had a connection, a guy that from Athletes in Action that was part of that team. He was like the general manager, essentially. He knew this guy in Australia that was the general manager of a team in kind of the second division in Australia. And they had just been like put into that second division, and they were allowed to imports. So American players basically. And so the timing was really good. I was playing really well. And the Australia team called him and said, "Hey, do you know of anybody?" And they said, "Hey, we got this guy that can shoot, and he'll be able to score for you guys." So it just worked out perfect. Like, it's not like I had agents or anything like that. Like, it just kind of worked out. And I was like, heck yeah, I want to go live in Australia. And I went. It was great, really amazing people. And, I was able to kind of connect to a church, and just awesome. I still keep in touch with a couple of the guys. Did that for a year. and it wasn't super high level ball. You know, it was the starting five on every team was really good, and then it dropped off quickly.
Okay.
But the level of basketball was really good for at that level, and just it was great because there's no language barrier. Like I was able to run, be part of basketball camps at the rec center that owned the team, and it's very different. There's no high school and college sports over there, so it's structured very different. But amazing experience, life experience, and I was going to go back. The plan, I didn't really have anything keeping me here. The plan was to go back for 3 years and just commit, and just maybe I'll live there. I could have easily lived there. It was beautiful. And then I met my wife on a blind date, and I was home. I was home for like 3 months, and I was going to go back. And we met on a blind date, and I was like, ooh. She's not going to wait for me for 3 years, and she was still in college, and it was like okay, I had my fun. I'm good now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Do I remember correctly? Did Tony play in New Zealand or Australia as well?
Yeah, New Zealand. Yep. Yeah, he was in the NBA for 3 years, and then he got hurt. And I think if he doesn't get hurt, he's probably a 10-year veteran. He was, because every team you need a backup point guard for 8 to 15 minutes a game. The guy who comes in for the last couple minutes of the first quarter, first couple minutes, second quarter. There's every team has one of those guys, and he was doing that really well. He wouldn't have been a starter, but he would have probably been a backup point guard for 10 years if he hadn't gotten hurt. But once he got healthy again, then he went over there and played, I think, and coached as well.
Hey, something you brought up, and I don't want to gloss over your coaching experience at college and things like that, but you mentioned student teaching. So I want to try to tie that into the driveway is in the driveway you're teaching, you're coaching, you're at that ground level. Was that in the back of your mind when you're coaching college, when you're playing in Australia, that this is something that I want to bring back to youth and bring back to my area?
I certainly didn't have visions of doing what I'm doing now.
Okay.
I liked coaching. I certainly thought I would coach at some level, and I did my student teaching, and I coached like 7th and 8th grade at the school I was student teaching at. And then I went out to Massachusetts and coached. I was an assistant coach at a college, a small like Division III college, kind of like a St. Norbert or something like that in just north of Boston. Did that for a year and really liked that, really liked college, and thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And then came home. I didn't, the head coach, the guy that I was coaching with, he was the head coach. He quit at the end of the year he actually had used to work for Athletes in Action. He wanted to go back to doing that. And so I basically ran the team the second half of the season because he was kind of gone and kind of checked out. He knew he was leaving. So he let me kind of run things, which was great. As a 25-year-old assistant coach, I'm like totally hands-on. And then I interviewed for the job, and it came down to me and another guy. But this guy had like 10 years of head coaching experience at the D3 level, and he was by far the better choice. He ended up being really good there. But I didn't get the job, but I was like, okay, I'm going to be a college coach. So one of the things you have to do to just like a box you have to check is you have to get your master's degree. So we were in Green Bay at the time. We'd just gotten married. And I went to Oshkosh to get my master's degree. So I started taking classes there, and then was an assistant at St. Norbert College for a year. All the while, like, okay, I'm going to get my master's, and then I'll start applying for jobs. But then, you get married, and it's like, okay, well, that might change. And so life happened, and decided not to be a college coach, and actually, went and worked for a pharmaceutical company in Milwaukee while my wife was in grad school. And then, didn't love it, and felt like there's got to be something else that I can do, and stumbled across this job at Appleton Alliance Church. They wanted to use sports as a way to reach out in the community. And my wife was actually at a conference with their pastor, and he was sharing, it was like she does consulting work, and her group was consulting with these pastors, and he shared the vision of the church that they wanted to use sports as a way to communicate and reach out to the community. She drove home. We were in Milwaukee at the time. She drove home from Appleton, told me about this church, and this job that they were going to be starting to look for. And I got in my car the next morning and drove up to Appleton and hand delivered my resume. And they're like, and because I remember I showed up at the front desk and the lady was like, well, what are you doing? You don't have an appointment? Because the senior pastor, there's very hard to get a hold of. Like,
okay,
he's busy, and
Pastor Episcopal, right?
Yes. You can't just roll in and talk.
Yeah.
So I rolled in, no appointment, no phone call, nothing. I just was like, I'm going to try and make an impression, and so I just showed up, drove an hour and a half or whatever it was, and she's like, well, you can just sit there if you want, but he's not going to be able to see it, So I waited and waited and waited, and then finally he had some time, and I went in and I introduced myself, and we hit it off pretty good. And he's like, we're not really even starting to hire somebody, but when we do, we'll contact you. Well, just, I was always the first guy on their list just because I was the first guy to even interview about or even like show interest. So that I did that for 10 years, and that was great. And that part of that job was running camps. I started running outdoor basketball camps in the summer at 95 degrees and
right,
yelling over the highway, and really and just built it from nothing to something, to the point where in 2016 and so I was doing that. That was part of my job at the church, but it was only in the summer. During the school year I ran other programs and stuff for the church, and but then I had a side business as well. I started Ryan Borowicz Basketball, which is just a way to do instruction on my own. And I would go to kids' houses and work with them, or I'd meet them at a park, or I'd, run a shooting clinic for their 7th grade team or whatever. And that really kind of started getting busier and busier. And then in 2016, I was like, okay, both things are getting busier. I can't do both. I have to choose one, or both are going to be not good. And so I just, I was 40, and I knew if I didn't do the driveway, I would have regretted it, 10 years down the road. And I just made that choice. Like, okay, this is it. We're jumping in, we're going to put our savings into this. And
wow,
didn't have any money, but just emptied our 401k stuff and just said, we're going to do this, and found a bank partner, which was really fortunate because a bunch of banks told me no.
Okay.
And so that's kind of the story of how the driveway started. But back to your question about instruction and teaching, I always knew I wanted to coach. I didn't know what that would look like, because what I do now wasn't even a thing when I was a college player. It wasn't even an industry. Now it's a full-on industry. There's skills trainers everywhere. Right. So, it wasn't a thing that you thought you could do. You either coached a team or you didn't. Exactly. Now I'm fortunate because I get to coach skills, and what I like about it is, like, that's kind of how I see the game. When I watch a game, I'm watching a guy's footwork. I'm watching his how he handles the ball, and I'm watching his shooting form. And sometimes I don't see the fact that, they should be in a 1-3-1 zone because that team can't, you know what I mean? Like, there's the X's and O's side, and then there's the skill side. And I've always looked at the game from the skill side. So it fits how I see the game really well, because that's what I'm looking for anyway.
How many athletes do you have come through the driveway in a given time period?
Oh boy. Well, our summer camps, 10 weeks, 65 camps, probably 2,500 kids.
Oh my gosh.
And that's just in the camp. So if you guys probably don't know the facility, there's the gym side, and then there's the shooting cage side.
Yep.
And in the so while we have 2 camps every day, 30 to 35 kids in the morning, a different 30 to 35 in the afternoon, and we do that every day. On the other side of the building, there's kids using their membership for the shooting cages, and there's kids doing one-on-one training with our staff at the same time. So it's really busy in the summer. And then throughout the school year it is too. There's different kind of seasons, kind of like 4 different seasons of things where we offer different things. I couldn't give you a number as far as how many kids come through. We do from first grade all the way through college players.
Wow. You employ a lot of young athletes, like high school kids. My son goes, he's graduated this year. He goes to FVL. I know one of his buddies works for you. I think his name is Isaac Knoll.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's really cool because I've known Isaac since probably he was in 7th grade, 6th grade. He used to come to my camps, and then he and I did a lot of individual work the last couple of years, one-on-one time. And now I get to, hire him to work with kids in the summer. So I love that. Like I've got 4 or 5 of those people on my staff this summer and every summer. So this summer we have probably 20 people on staff.
Wow.
Normally there's 3 of us full-time. Myself and 2 others are full-time year-round. And then we have, 3 or 4 front desk people to help out here and there. We have kids that run, like high school kids, we'll hire to run birthday parties. We do a ton of birthday parties throughout the year. And then in the summer, we have all, anywhere from 8 to 10 current college players that are kids that I've worked with for the most part as they were growing up and came to our camps. And now they get to be the ones in front of the kids, which is really cool. It's so fun. Last night I took the staff out for dinner, just kind of wind down the summer thing, because some of them are starting to head back to school or whatever. And it was just fun to sit there, because then I met with, I don't know if you guys remember the Campbell sisters, Eliza and Olivia. They played at Oshkosh. They won 2 state championships at Notre Dame when Notre Dame started their big run here.
Sure.
And the Campbell sisters worked for me for 5 years, 5 summers.
Wow.
And they were there last night, and so like, and Zach Hayes, he played at Wrightstown. Zach worked for me for 3 summers. So like, and Zach and I started working, he came to my camps in 6th grade, and now he's, mid-20s, and we get, so it's really a cool thing. It makes me feel old, but it's really cool to like have these kids like Isaac that were campers and now they get to be the coach, and it's really cool.
I would assume that it makes you feel old, but you also get to pass on those ideals you have as a human to these young athletes as well, and that's something that's probably super special to you also.
Well, and it like there's not most of these kids that we work with aren't going to be college basketball players. Some of them might not even play in high school, but I get a chance to impact them through a stupid little basketball, and like, how cool is that? And I just feel it's a real privilege that, and it wakes me up every morning with a smile. Like, I get a chance to do this, that whole thing about the word get versus have, I have to go to work and deal with basketball kids, all day, versus I get to work with kids every day and we get to share all this impact and life experiences that I've had. And, I end every camp every day. So twice a day, I give a talk at the end of every camp. And so that's 65 times over the summer where I get 30 sets of eyes and 20 sets of parents' eyes, and they're locked into what I'm saying for 10 minutes. That's cool. It has nothing to do with basketball, but yet it's weaved in the course of basketball. And, today I talked about, putting into what you or getting out of sports, what you put into it, and getting out of life, what you put into it. And I used a basketball as a thing, as a prop in the demo, but it just drew the kids' eyes, and you could hear a pin drop because they're focused on what I'm saying, because it has to do with a game. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yet it's way more than the game. So I really take that serious, like that opportunity and privilege that parents give me by paying their money to send their kid to my camp, because anybody can teach them basketball, and that's great. And we take that serious too. But to me, it's that 10 minutes at the end of the camp that I get a real chance to impact somebody. Yesterday, I shared a story. I read this story years ago, and I share it all the time. And it's about the 2 guys that tried to be the first explorers to find the South Pole. And they, one guy had a plan and a purpose, and he had purpose is one of our words for the summer. So it like, we have 4 words, a theme. We have a theme called Choose Your Path for this summer. PATH, purpose, attitude, toughness, hustle. Those are 4 things you can choose. You can't choose your coach. You can't choose how tall you're going to be, but you can choose those things. And so purpose was the word. And so I told the story about, the one guy who was just going to wing it. They were just going to go, they were going to go 50 miles per day if they could. And if the weather wasn't good, they'd sit in their tents. Versus the guy who this guy named Amundsen, in his true story, he had a 20-mile march, and he was going to go 20 miles no matter what every single day. And, it's the South Pole, so there's terrible weather and all this. And Amundsen went 20 miles every day, and he reached his goal the day that he planned on reaching it. Whereas Scott, the other guy, they went 50 miles one day, but then the guys in their crew were so exhausted they couldn't move the next day. Then a storm rolls in, keeps them in their tents for 7 days. Meanwhile, Amundsen 20 miles every single day. And I equated that to the kids. Like, you want to be a good basketball player, you want to play in varsity, you're in 7th grade right now. What are you going to do every day to get there? Yeah. You know, it's just like Amundsen. Or are you just going to play in one tournament like Scott and say, well, hopefully I get better this term? Or are you going to be in your driveway doing something every single day, 20 miles every day? You know, so like being able to tie those kind of stories and lessons into basketball, I just love it. Like, it's my favorite thing to do.
That's a great perspective. I mean, my boys don't play basketball. They're hockey, lacrosse, and but it's the same type of thing. What are you going to do every single day to help you improve? And it's taking shots in the driveway. It's shooting into the net in the backyard for lacrosse. It's those things that we've, as a society, unfortunately, we've kind of gone away from. And it's refreshing to hear you talk about, you know, making those commitments so that, you know, that's awesome. I really appreciate that.
It really transfers into real life too. Cause like you're in sales. You got to make those calls every day, whether you want to or not. You know, like my job, I don't have like summer's as busy as could be, but we start planning for the fall in July, and I can't just say, no, I'm not going to do it. Like, we have stuff we have to do in July to get ready for October, you know? So it's that, you know, I try to put, and I know they're 7th grade, they're 5th grade, they might not get it, but I know they're listening. And I know as a parent, I love when my kids can be impacted by other people besides me. And so I know when those parents are sitting up there and they're watching and they're hearing me talk, I'm really speaking for them. And I'm to the kid, I'm not their parent, so they're going to listen to me. Right. And, you know, it's kind of funny because like, I'm still this coach who they like today. I do a shooting demonstration for my shooting clinics, and I made 66 in a row from 17 feet today. Nice. So instantly I have credibility, right? I'm not just this random guy who's running basketball camp. This guy's teaching me to shoot. He just made 66 shots in a row. I better listen. So now at the end of camp, I also get their attention because I'm talking about things other than making shots. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a neat way to tie in like this skill that, you know, God gave me and I worked real hard at, but yet I'm using it for something else.
When you're addressing the kids and you mentioned that parents are sitting up in the bleachers, do you think they take in the message too and really think about it?
I've had parents do that for sure. You know, I certainly don't like put myself on a pedestal like, oh, I'm here to teach everybody, and I'm giving myself these lessons as much as anything. And you know, I know, but I have had parents, you know, come up to me and say, thank you, I needed to hear that. Like, not their kid needed to hear that.
Yeah.
You know, but I know that as a parent, again, like I know that me saying that goes a long ways for them, because now they can talk about it in the car on the way home, and it's not them giving their kid a life lesson and like, okay, mom, whatever, you know, or okay, dad. It's, hey, coach was talking about that thing at the end of camp. What did you think about that? Oh yeah, he was talking about this and that. They'll talk about it because it's not them saying it. It was me, even though it's probably the same message they're trying to get across as parents.
Right. It's incredible.
Right. Well, what a gift you give them. It's a gift.
Well, and one of my things I've always said, and I've always felt this: to whom much is given, much is expected. And, you know, that's a biblical thing. And for me, I had good parents. I had a good upbringing. I had opportunity. I had blessing. Like, I was given much. I worked hard for things too, but now much is expected of me. And I say the same thing to my sons. Like, you know, you've been given much. Now do something with it.
Yeah.
Right. Ryan, I can't think of a better way to end this than that. I mean, what a powerful message.
Well, I do have one thing to ask you. Not totally end this, but I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning in your fly fishing. So we interviewed Tim a couple of weeks ago, and Tim is a really good friend of mine. I can't remember how long I've known him, but has Tim taught you some things with fly fishing?
Oh, yeah, I did. So I got into fly fishing about 20 years ago, and it was, you know, I've always loved the mountains, but I had never been to the mountains until, you know, we got married and we started going out there. And I did a fly fishing trip in Colorado on the Eagle River, and it was like oh boy, this is my thing. There's something about it. Just like for some people, bow hunting is their, and I liked fishing growing up, but then when I did that, I was like, oh, this is different. I like this. And then the next couple days later, I was driving to this little creek that we lived by, and there was some northern in there, and I had my spinning rod. I didn't have a lot of gear at all. In fact, I had one fishing rod, and I rolled the back window up, and the rod was sticking out, and it broke the tip. And I was like, well, I guess I'll become a fly fisherman now. And so that was probably my first time when I went to Tight Lines, and they used to be on Main Street in De Pere, and I went there, and so then I didn't know Tim real well. You're just another guy in the shop kind of thing. But I did a couple trips with him when I was really getting into it, so got to know him through that. And then I don't know, 4 years ago, I started. I called him and this other guy that I knew, Jeremy Moore. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jeremy. He runs something called Moore Outdoors. He does dog training, and then he does.
Yep.
He invented this thing called the licking stick. He makes these hunting products.
Right.
Really cool business. Went to Ashwaubenon. I didn't know him really well then, but so Tim and I and Jeremy get together every quarter or so and just talk shop. Talk business stuff, and because we kind of have similar businesses, even though we're in totally different industries. Like you still deal with the same problems. So anyway, I've gotten to know Tim really well now through that. And that's just really, every time we do it, we're like, man, we need to do this every month. And we'll knock off 2 hours, no problem, And so then, I don't know what it was about fly fishing. There's, I like to be by myself. I'm actually surprisingly, I'm an introvert, even though I spend most of my day around people. But when I can get out by myself and fish, like I'm going to do in a week and a half here, that's heaven.
That's awesome. My good friend, Sam Tion, introduced me to Tim, and they crash coursed me on how to fly fish. And then a month later, we flew down to Key West.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm trying to fly fish in Key West, which it didn't go well, but I've developed a love for it as well. And I've been out with Tim, and when Tim and I get together, it's not really a guide trip. And he stole a lot of fish from me. And, but it was fun. It's cool. Tim's a great guy. And he really, I'll say this. He really wanted us to interview you as well, because he had a lot of respect for you. And we had a great time up at his shop. I always have a good time when I go up there. Yeah. And Ryan, this was awesome. You're a great individual. And I knew a little bit about you from my son Will's friends and Isaac. And you're the real deal. What you're doing is fantastic. And it's such a refreshing look for these kids in this community, and a great thing you offer.
Thanks, guys. It's I feel very, very fortunate to. This is my job. Are you kidding me? There's times I go to work and I live really close to the driveway. It's like a 2-minute drive, and you drive by people. And I've had tough jobs. I've had jobs I didn't like. I had jobs I had to do. Like I said, but I walk by or I drive by people and I'm like, that guy's probably going to a job he doesn't like. And I get to do this. Are you kidding me? So even though it's crazy hours and it's physically demanding, it's very rewarding. And you get a chance. We had some lady was from Kingsford, Michigan, was at camp the last 3 days. They spent 2 nights in a hotel. They came to camp for three straight days. And they came up to me afterwards. They walked across the court, to come and talk to me, just say, thanks, this is great. And that I know I had an impact on that kid, and that's really cool because people like Tony Bennett had an impact on me. And so to be able to, to whom much is given, much is expected, to be able to take that gift of impact that he gave to me and others and now pass that on is really cool.
Well, I tell you what, our goal in this podcast is to share stories, and we are truly privileged to share your story and talk about the driveway. And thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thanks, guys. It was really fun. I enjoy getting to know other people and doing these kind of things is really fun, and sharing my stories is great too.
Joe, that was one of my favorite interviews. I didn't know what to expect talking with Ryan. I knew about him, never met him before, and it was just a nice flowing, just an informative interview. I really enjoyed that.
I did too, and I really enjoyed the message. I think it came through in the interview. One of the things that just absolutely, well, we used the word refreshing a couple of times in the interview, but to have that type of approach to mentoring and to teaching kids how to play the game of basketball was, to me, you just don't hear that anymore. And that's, I believe that's ultimately what we all want, is somebody to teach our kids and entrust our kids with, is that type of mentality where there's no pressure, it's not AAU. It's just, I'm going to show you how to shoot a basketball. I'm going to show you how to work hard. I'm going to show you life skills that, yes, they're going to help you on the basketball court, but they're really going to help you the rest of your life. And that, to me, is what a coach is all about.
Yeah. And, we're continuing this theme too, as we hear these people talk about multiple sports, playing multiple sports. And even though he runs the driveway, stress that idea of multiple sports as well.
It's one of those unintentional consequences that happen from talking to all those people. We're so hyper-focused that you have to be a specific athlete in a specific sport, and you have to do this and you have to do that. You're right. Every single person that we've talked to so far in the Newsa-Cast have all played multiple sports, and they're all the top in whatever sport they're in. But it was after years of playing multiple sports, and it's eye-opening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go check out the driveway, and we can't thank Ryan enough. That was a lot of fun.
And if you're enjoying these podcasts and these stories, feel free, go to Spotify, go to iTunes, download, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your neighbors. Hey, we're even in Guatemala now, so
we've hit big time. But Tasha's right. I mean, we're literally on our hands and knees right now, begging you to share this, to like this, to listen to it. The numbers, they really, really, really do help, and they help groups like us, especially. I think we have some pretty good content. I mean, where else are you going to just really learn about people like we've been able to learn about here on the Newsa-Cast?
Absolutely. Well, that was, like I said, another great interview, another great story, probably even better, that we had here on the Newsa-Cast.
Hey, Newsa-Cast listeners, you can find every episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Please help us grow by subscribing or sharing the Newsa-Cast, or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
It's throwback time, Tosh. This is a big one.
This is a huge one. This is a great one.
This is, I still have to pinch myself to make sure that this actually happened.
Yeah, like you said, this was a huge one for the Red Smith Awards. A big name, and just a lot of fun.
So huge, in fact, we haven't even said the name yet.
Right. This is Bill Walton. The stream of consciousness in this throwback that you're only getting a clip of here on the podcast is absolutely incredible. He talked and talked and talked.
And still talking.
Might still be talking.
I think so.
Yeah. So it was fantastic. But remember, this is only a clip because you can get the full throwback on our YouTube channel as well. And that is a treat. You definitely want to take some time and watch the YouTube channel for that throwback of Bill Walton, because the entire, I want to say it's an interview, but it's Bill Walton. It's Bill just
Bill
talking.
Walton was in Appleton, Wisconsin, and we had it recorded, and you get to see it.
Yeah. And if you really like this as well, don't forget to check out Bill's ESPN, The Luckiest Man Alive, 4 episodes. I watched it. It's fantastic. You hear some of the stuff that he talks about. in that as well during this interview. So hope you enjoy this clip. And I do say a clip because it is only a small piece of Bill Walton talking.
Red Smith Sports Awards Banquet Throwback.
The Red Smith Award, of course, goes to someone who has made some unique contributions to sport in Wisconsin, and also epitomizes the great values that Red Smith exhibited.
Let's give a Red Smith welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, the legendary Mr. Bill Walton.
Wow, what a deal. I made it. I made it. It's past my bedtime pretty much, but just got off the Grateful Dead tour, ready to go here. Listening to the Curlers throwing stones, I thought that was the song we were chanting for, or it was about going on a trip to the urologist. I'm not sure. But to hear the stories of Casey, and now I can't figure out, was it Leroy or was it Roy Lee? Or was that just me hearing Roy Lee? I mean, I couldn't figure that one out, but just to hear their stories, and my life couldn't have been more different. And then the curling guys, yeah, curling, that's my favorite sport. I just happen to be 6'11", and I'm much better at getting high than getting low. So, but the opportunity to come to the basketball capital of this universe, oh my gosh, the home of our Milwaukee Bucks, and how fantastic. And we can only hope that they do it again this year, because it's such a beautiful team and a beautiful community, and love everything about it. And to be here today and have the incredible warm reception and welcome that I got here in Appleton today, and to have the pickup last night at the airport in Milwaukee by Joe, and then an incredible tour of your beautiful, magnificent city this morning by Mackenzie, young Mackenzie. Oh my gosh. There is nothing better than to see the smile on the faces of young people, and to see the video up here where you just gave all this money to empower people, and then to come here tonight and to be able to meet Jim and Lisa, Mackenzie's parents, and all the people who have spent so much of their lives to build this remarkable community. And I was really thrilled to be able to get to Lawrence College today, because that was my first choice to go to college, but I couldn't get in. So I had to go to a public school in Los Angeles. And when I was at the NBA 75 celebration in Cleveland, February 18th, not that I remember the date, but I had the privilege of reacquainting with Giannis. And what an incredible human being he is. And I have no idea. I never assume that anyone knows me or anything about me. So I always introduce myself. My name is Bill, 2 L's, and I'm from San Diego. And I've got this brand new team back here that I sat with at the table with Michael, with Accelerate, and then Jen, and Kip, and Ryan, and Luke, and Chris, and Bill. And it's just a spectacular team, joining some of the other great teams I've been part of, UCLA, and the Portland Trail Blazers, and the Boston Celtics. And if we had had Steve Ballmer as our owner on the Clippers instead of Donald Sterling, we would have been a lot better off. And if you ever doubt the value and power and importance of leadership, just check out the difference between the criminal nature and behavior of Donald Sterling with the worst basketball and even worse business practices. Oh my gosh. And now you have Steve Ballmer, and he's running just the model franchise. Absolutely incredible. But when I was with Giannis at the All-Star 75, we were just chatting aimlessly. mindlessly, which is the worst kind of conversation to have. But we were just having a good time and a good laugh, and I kind of had to tell him that I had gone to UCLA. And he looked at me with that really fine accent that he has. He says, "Oh, is that a college in Los Angeles?" And I said, yes. But to be here on the heels of a championship for the Bucks, and the Bucks with the championship 50 years ago, because that was a team that was all anchored by UCLA people with Kareem, Oscar, yes, he went to Cincinnati, but Lucius Allen, incredible, Bob Dandridge, I mean, all these guys, Hall of Famers, phenomenal players out there, and then Larry Costello, who just went into the Basketball Hall of Fame. And it was just absolutely spectacular for me to be with Giannis, with Steph, and all the other heroes, Kevin Durant, and all the players who are going to be deciding in front of our lives the future, because the winners get to write history. And listen to young Casey here and the stories. I mean, before I got here today, I thought La Crosse was a city in Wisconsin. And then I heard him speak, and I'm asking myself, I mean, I have one skill in life, and that is that I'm somehow, some way, able to get to places where I don't belong. And that's this stage, too, with Leroy or Roy Lee. I can't figure it out. You're going to help me with this, Shane. And then Casey, and then the curlers, Colin and John, and the other guy, I didn't get his name, but the guy with the hair. And to see that, and to be here, too, in the presence of Abby, our phenomenal anthem singer. And I had the privilege of having my picture made with Abby before the show tonight, and to be able to be in her presence when she was just glowing up here on the stage, and how much fun that is, because I love the anthem. And the anthem is like religion, it's like spirituality, it's like humanity. There's a lot of us, and we're all different. But that moment before the moment of truth, which is the national anthem, when they play the song and whatever it means to you, but that's your private time. And you don't get a lot of private time in life when you just get to think, and you just get to dream, and you just get to feel. And I was just reliving all the memories that I had through young Abby, because her opportunity as just a young child getting up here on the stage. And I was so super lucky, because I found sports when I was 8 years old. And when I say found, because it was a simple twist of fate. You know, I hear the ticking of the clock. How long must I wait for that simple twist of fate? People tell me it's a sin to know and feel too much within. Blame it on that simple twist of fate. But my parents, the greatest parents ever, right? But we had nothing. You know, I'm not like Leroy or Roy Lee. I'm not like Casey. I'm not like John, Colin, and the hair dude. You know, I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. You know, I was lucky to have a plastic spoon. But while we had nothing in terms of material possessions, we had everything, because we had a family, and I had great parents, greatest parents ever, who had zero interest in sports. Zero. I never shot a basket with my dad. I saw him run one time at the church picnic and fell over laughing. It wasn't St. Joseph's Church right next door to here. No, but we beat them badly. And then my mom was our town's librarian. But I was super lucky in that I found my first coach when I was 8 years old, following my older brother. Now, my older brother recently passed, 2 years, 18 months older than me. He was a football player. He played for all of your favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys. And after being an All-America at UCLA, academic All-America. But Bruce and I are the only brothers in the history of the world, or at least of this world, to have played in the Super Bowl and to have won the NBA championship. And so here it was one day after school. I'm following Bruce home, and he wasn't going home. And I kept saying, "What's going on? Where are we going? What's happening?" And he said, "Just follow me." And so I did. And I found sports and my very first coach that day. His name was Rocky. And he had another name, but nobody ever called him anything other than Rocky. Rocky was a pillar of our community. He was a fireman. And when I was out there just on the east side of Appleton North High School, and I saw the Lungard Park being ready to be built for the next generations, and I can think of a fireman at 40 years old in this town gunned down at the bus station because he did what firemen do. You see a need, you see trouble, and you head right for it, and you say, I'll take care of this. Firefighter Lungard, he gave his life for us. Rocky, he gave his life for us. He wasn't gunned down, no. Rocky, he was the volunteer coach at our elementary school for 57 years, and he never took a penny. And when he finally died, he died just a couple years ago, but he did everything. When he finally died, he was the richest guy I've ever known in my life. And we can't sit here today and say that Rocky knew anything about sports, but he knew life, and he knew fun, and he knew joy, and he knew how to build a team and build a community. And what I have seen here in Appleton has just reaffirmed my belief that the effort it's going to take to get to tomorrow is worth it. Because we live these blessed and privileged lives, and privilege, it demands responsibility and obligation and duty, and the duty that we are realizing right here in this room. And all you have to do, this has been a great program and a great event and a wonderful city. And I mean, and Appleton, when I think of Appleton, I just think of this beautiful sunny spring day that we had today. And that's all we get here is just nothing but endless sunshine. And so when we had all the speakers up here, and then the last video, and the children receiving the tools, the equipment, and whether it's sporting equipment or whether it's a computer or a new tablet or whether it's some clothes or whether it's some food or whatever it is they need, because that's what this group is all about. The Red Smith Awards. I'll take care of that. And you guys certainly have done that, and I saw that in your community today. And so as I've been on just an incredible run in my life, going from the NBA's all-time 75 team. I mean, it was remarkable when I got that information back in September of 21. I was in Houston giving a talk and a speech to a big real estate conference, and I got home that night. I was checking all my electronics and all the communication that we have today, and there it was, that I had been named one of the top 75 players in the history of the NBA. And I said, yeah, man.
So let me ask you this, Bill. Of all the accolades, and they're a mile long, there's a million of them, what are you most proud of?
I'm not proud. I'm disappointed, and I'm ashamed, and I'm embarrassed that I wasn't able to do more. And I'm the most injured player ever. I missed my 14-year NBA career. I heard KC talk about his incredible longevity and skills and records and championships, and then I think what he said was that his brothers came up and beat all those. Is that what he said? Yeah, I mean, I thought lacrosse was a city. And so, yeah. When I was fortunate enough to go into the Hall of Fame, and they told us, it was March 10th, 1993, not that I remember the date. They told us we each had 5 minutes to say our thanks and express our gratitude. Well, at the 16-minute mark of my first, of my 5 minutes, I took my first breath. And the guy in the back of the room, where Joe's standing over there, who's monitoring the situation for the NBA and realizing that the bars in Western Massachusetts close early, and so we had to get out of there that night. As I took my first breath at the 16-minute mark, he said, "Come on, Walton, let's wrap this speech up. It's lasting longer than your career did." But I'm proud of being part of something special. And I'm proud that the nicest thing that anybody's ever said about me as a basketball player was that I helped my teammates play better. I'm proud to have been part of incredibly special teams whose records still stand to this very day. I'm proud of the choices that I've made. They haven't all turned out to be the right choices, but they were, at the time, I thought they were right. And so I did those. And I don't live a life where I'm worried about external forces. I try to be the best that I can be. I'm always reminded of another Coach Wooden mantra. It's not how or what you teach, it's who the teachers are themselves. We have not taught until they've learned. And so, as I go through this whole deal, and I made it to all the tops of all these different mountains, I realized that as you're climbing these mountains, and you're getting near the top and you look back down and you say, oh my God, I can't believe I came this far. And then I get to the top and I look out and there's ever more mountains out there in front of us, and how many more different opportunities, how many more different challenges there are, how many different privileges there are for me to go out there and try to do something to put that smile on those people's faces. And as I live this life of the constant pressure and the stress and to be at the Final Four and to be at that game of forever between Duke and North Carolina, and all these guys just trying so hard, and the world writing the movie about how Coach K is going to go out on his final game, and it's all right there, and everybody's playing so great in the crowd, and just animosity, hatred, love, bliss, perfection, and it's all right there. And then at the very end of this scripted story of Coach K going out on his white horse Mescalito into the distance, North Carolina of all teams comes in and say, no man, we're writing the ending here, because we never know how these games are going to play out. And while this world of stress and anxiety and anticipation and uncertainty and doubt and hesitation and risk and failure, it's all right there. And that's my life every single day. When we were coming home the other day and it was the worst of everything, traffic, LA, California, smog, dirt, dust. I mean, the things I do a lot of, ride my bike and go on airplanes. And in those two situations, you see the best of humanity and you see the worst of humanity. And so there I was, and I was involved in just the worst of it all. And I'm just frustrated and angry and upset, and I'm just going ready, just crazy, to a place I didn't want to be. And my wife, Lori, is just sitting over there, just so calm and so poised and so quiet, but just so helpful in every way. And as I'm right about to lose it, she reaches over and taps me on the arm, and she says, hey, big boy, just remember, you were just named one of the 75 greatest players in the history of the NBA. I'm indeed the luckiest guy in the world. And I can see Joe with my peripheral vision. I can see the guy with the hair. And I know it's time to go. So
one more time, the Hall of Famer, Bill Walton.
All right, Tosh, it's that time again. Want to play a little It's Forgotten and I'm Never Forgetting?
Yep, well, we'll try to run through this again. We always kind of mess it up a little bit, but we'll get it down at some point. That was the smoothest it's ever been said, though, I have to say. It took us 7 episodes, but we got it. I think you're right.
Well, what are you forgetting, Tosh?
Well, I'm going to go, and this is a kind of an interesting one because maybe interesting to me. I'm going to say I want to forget chain restaurants. Yeah. And I don't want to say that I totally want to forget them, because sometimes you just need a meal that you know what it's going to taste like. And maybe when you're traveling, that chain restaurant is a good thing that you see, because it's you know what it's going to be. But overall, when we look at our community and we look at our small towns, I'd rather see more of the small restaurants, the locals,
absolutely,
the one-offs, maybe 2 of them in town. The chain restaurants are great, but we lost Houdini's, which is a local one-off restaurant, and we've had lots of them in the past that we've lost. So the chain restaurant, although it serves a purpose, overall, kind of like to forget the chain restaurant.
Kind of agree, Tash. I think those quaint little restaurants, those mom and pop diners. That's the fabric of the town that you live in, and usually, almost always, the best food.
What do you got, Joe?
Well, Tash, we're in football season, and I'm a high school football official, and one thing I'm very, very thankful that I'm forgotten is the old enforcement rule of holding. This rule should have been changed years ago, and I cannot thank the NFHS enough for finally changing it to the college rule. So in years past, if you, in high school football, so you had a basic running play and you held 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage, it's 1st and 10, you held 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage, that was the enforcement spot. The spot of the penalty is where that enforcement took place. So a simple holding turned into a 15-yard penalty. Sometimes it was a 20-yard penalty if you had a pass play and the holding, held 10 yards back. Now they're going to the traditional where you see in college where it goes to the previous spot. So it would be where the ball was snapped on the previous snap. So in essence, a holding now turns into a 10-yard foul, which is the way it should be, I believe. So absolutely. So I am thankfully have forgotten the old enforcement rule in the NFHS.
Take that one off your plate to remember, right?
Absolutely.
Well, good. That'll be a big change for high school.
Yeah.
I mean, really, truly changing some of the outlooks of possibly decisions by coaches and plays. That'll be a positive
it absolutely
change,
will. And the biggest thing is that it was just a catastrophic foul for something that does happen, quite a bit, is just the basic holding. I mean, if you held at any point on any series, you were pretty much done. Most teams. So yeah, it's a much needed change. It's a change that's people have been crying for years, and the NFHS finally changed. And you'll notice, I mean, there's literally 100 rule definitions or rule differences between high school, the NFL, and college. And one of the frustrations with officials is people thinks it's Sunday out there on a Friday night. Well, no, it's a whole different set of rules. People aren't used to that. But usually what happens is that the NFL has their set of rules. Then you have college, and college tries to catch up with the NFL, and high school is below that. So eventually the NFHS catches up with college, and these rules are ever-evolving. So it just takes time. It starts in the NFL, trickles to the college, and then finally down to the NFHS. So we're finally there when it comes to this enforcement, which is good.
And you bring up possible another episode of the armchair quarterbacks in the stands.
Absolutely.
So we'll talk about that one later. But hey, what are you never forgetting, Joe?
Well, Tosh, this is a very personal one. It's probably even a little weird one for most people, but given my age, I'm never forgetting the fact that I love to grow my hair long. I've kind of changed it up in the last year and just let the hair flow. And while most people probably can't understand it, and frankly, the absolute most favorite thing about growing hair is me looking at other people react to looking at my hair. I absolutely get off on that and love that. I'm just never forgetting the feeling of growing my hair, Tosh. How long it lasts, I'm not sure, but for now, I'm not forgetting.
Coming from a guy who hasn't had hair for 30 years. Yeah. Hey, good luck with that.
Tosh, I feel that I'm obligated to grow hair for the folks that are less fortunate.
There you go. Well, Joe, I'm going to stick with my theme of restaurants, and there's one that I'm never forgetting, and that is Mongo's.
Yeah.
I used to go to Mongo's for the Mongolian barbecue, and they also had a cool bar upstairs where we got to see some live music. But that was the original Mongolian barbecue here in the Fox Valley, and right off of right downtown area, right by the post office,
right across from the Post Crescent.
Yeah, that was
just the time
from the Post Crescent. Yep, that was awesome. So that's one that I just kind of remembered, and
that's a great one. In fact, Mongo's came up a couple of times during Mile of Music, and in particular with the Digstown guys. The night we were kind of hanging with them, we brought up Mongo's, and those guys had been there as well. That was such a great music venue. Thursday night music. I first saw Cool Waters there back in mid-90s, probably. Remember Dante on the bass? His fingers looked like spiders going up the fretboard. That was just insane. But yeah, that was the place. A small little place. Remember Burnt Toast and Jam played there a bunch too. but that was the place to go. And yeah, the food was not bad either. That was really, really good. Good call, Tosh.
Yeah, those are some good ones. So awesome. And possibly a lead into another episode in the future, talking about those armchair quarterbacks.
Yeah, absolutely. Comfy chair. Someday I'll sit in that chair. Well, Tosh, that was fun. It's forgotten, and I'm never forgetting.
All right, Newsa-Cast listeners, you've made it through episode 7. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to what we're offering and the stories we're telling.
And Tosh, just Bill Walton, I know he is still talking, so you'll be able to get the full Bill Walton talking on YouTube. We at some point we had to cut it, right, for this.
He would have kept talking for days. I think, doesn't he say in his interview that once he got over somebody said he never talked, and once he got over his stuttering, he never stopped talking. So
yes. They did, yes. Bill, yes. That is very true. Bill is a world-class talker.
Yeah, so Joe makes a great point. If you liked the clip on the podcast, please go to YouTube and check out his entire throwback, because it was quite a night, and he did a great job. It was fun.
It was Bill freaking Walton.
Well, thanks again. We hope you enjoy our podcast. Get out there, subscribe, download wherever you get your podcast, and help us spread the stories that we're telling.
Thank you, guys, and we'll see you next Thursday. Thanks for listening to the Newsa-Cast. We appreciate your support. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do so and tell a friend. A huge thanks to Digstown for all the music in today's episode. Catch a gig or find them on Spotify. Northeastern Wisconsin Sports Advancement is a 501c3 organization. Our mission is to raise money, provide support, and create awareness for youth sports organizations in northeastern Wisconsin. We do this primarily through the Red Smith Sports Award Banquet and the Newsa-Cast. Each year, we give back to the community through 3 initiatives: the Every Kid Plays, the Gives Back Initiative, and scholarships to student athletes.